Hi, I'm Julie Margette Foster, and I am going to try to use Google Slides for this presentation on my enterprise architecture artifact. I'm going to be real honest and say that this is quite a heady topic. For me, I feel like this class is going way, way in depth in a business model that is most definitely applicable to education, but it hurts my brain. So I'm going to do the best I can with presenting this to you. I found a framework. I actually found it from the Federal Department of Education, from their Education Enterprise Architecture Guidebook. So they have not just an EA, but an EEA. And I suspect this is where Arizona got a lot of its information from. And I provided a link here to the actual document that I reference. I'm using one of their diagrams. This one made the most sense to me. It's very simple, but I think it gets across the message. So I'm going to take this each step at a time. I'm going to look at it from a general framework perspective and then from the perspective of my school. So there are four main pillars to this framework. The business, and all of them really, but business is the who, what, when, why, and how of the agency, or in this case, the school. This would be the agency's mission and philosophy and their vision. Information, this second tier here, is a framework for how all the information systems interrelate. So, and I'll go into specifics for my school in a moment, but this is where we make our decisions. This is where we have processes for information so that we can be collaborating and sharing and reusing information and not reinventing the wheel all the time. Application, this got fuzzy for me. When I actually applied this framework to my school, things got a little bit muddy for me, but it's my understanding that the application is about the relationships between the applications and the users, and then understanding how those applications support the agency, or like I said, the school. And then why, what does each application need and what are we using it for? And then also we need to be using consistent definitions across all of the applications. And I'll talk a little bit about how that works at St. Francis. The final pillar here of these four main pillars, I'm calling them, is technology. We need to document the agency's infrastructure components. And we need to have a unified vision of its infrastructure and technology platform. And that is tough when you are a tiny school with no money and you rely on people's goodwill and donations. It makes it hard to have a flexible, reliable, scalable, and secure system that needs to anticipate future requirements. I mean, even there's always stuff that comes up that we don't know about. Even stuff we do know about, it's hard to anticipate or to be prepared for those things. So I want to put this framework in the context for St. Francis, right? There's an overarching structure, but then there's a substructure for each section. And these structures, this substructure and the encompassing structure needs to be clearly communicated to the stakeholders, and there are lots of them, especially in a school. All right, so I'm going to take this piece by piece and look at it from St. Francis' perspective. The business side would be our school mission and philosophy, and I included them here. I abbreviated the philosophy because it's not as long as, or I'm sorry, it's longer than the mission statement, but too long to include here. So One of the things that we do is, in addition to our mission and philosophy, is that we believe that the students and the parents and the staff and the parish need to collaborate to build the new school facilities. We have had school plans for the last 15 years, and we have only gotten so far as to prepare the utilities infrastructure bits, and we use the pad as a parking lot now. So there's no concrete poured above ground. So we need everybody to get together, and we need to make this happen. We have a new pastor this year who set a 20-year vision to have 900 students. To put that in perspective, we currently have about 240 students. So that's a big, big goal. And that 240 is a jump of 45 students from last year. So we have a long ways to go. We have a clear mission. We know what we want to do. We don't always agree or understand how we're going to get there. So that's a problem. Information architecture. We have three main systems that we use: SchoolSpeak, Google Education, and our school website. Google Education has many apps, but primarily the one that sort of everything, all the other apps stem from is Google Classroom. Right now, our principal makes most of the IT decisions independently. There's no real process. I mean, we talk a lot about having a school tech coordinator, and I think this year we've come as close as we've ever been to having an actual functioning IT person. But she'd be the first one to admit that she's not she's not capable of doing everything that a trained IT person could do. And so while she's touted and she is an amazing IT person, she's not been included in many of the decisions. Only very recently did she even get the contact information for the privately contracted IT person that the school uses. So this is sketchy at best. We've made great gains, but we have a long way to go. We have a lot of redundancy of information, inconsistent information that's put into these three systems: SchoolSpeak, Google Education, and the school website. We have different people who are sort of quote-unquote in charge of each system. So while I'm the person at St. Francis who knows SchoolSpeak inside out, backwards and forwards, we still have people who are not keeping up with, they're not taking the time to really learn, really understand how SchoolSpeak works. And so we end up getting these inconsistent pieces and these redundant pieces, and it can be very frustrating. Google Education, we're having all kinds of trouble with parents right now who are frustrated because they don't understand how Google communicates with them versus how SchoolSpeak communicates with them. And the school website, I can't even begin to address right now because that's like a whole other issue, a whole other problem that requires its own presentation. So because there's inconsistency in who moderates each system, we get this inconsistency of information and redundancy and frustration, and it's just not the most efficient system, to say the least. Application architecture. So here's where I start to get fuzzy, because in the information and the application all seem very related, and I know all of these are related, but this is where I start to think, gosh, I wish I had more time to devote to this, but I also understand that the reason enterprise architecture positions exist is because this would be a full-time job. I mean, people can go to school to become enterprise architects, and that is not why I'm going to school, but it is beneficial for me to have a general understanding of this so that I can apply it to my school and to my future professional endeavors. So application at architecture at St. Francis is basically, it works so that SchoolSpeak is for parents, Google Apps are primarily for students, and the website is primarily a marketing tool. At least that's the way we have been articulating it in the past, and those lines have been blurred quite a bit. for various reasons. Our stakeholders don't seem to really understand the role of each application. And by stakeholders, I mean parents and teachers, which really leads to a lot of frustration over communication. Who puts what information in which system for which audience? That gets muddy. We have staff that are using applications who have varying degrees of knowledge of those applications. And so when you have someone who doesn't totally understand the workings of school speak, putting in information that everyone sees and uses, that can cause a lot of problems because things will be missing, or they're in the wrong place, or they're incorrect, or it's a problem. Now, and definitions too. I mean, if we're all speaking the same language, obviously that would make things much easier. And each system does have its own definitions for things, and sometimes they overlap. Most of the time they don't. But if people are not taking the time to learn them, then the people become confused. And those definitions don't really do us any good if we're not actually taking the time to learn them and apply them. So technology architecture is, like I mentioned, we have the one privately contracted IT person, and he kind of holds all the cards. Oh, look at that. That needs to be changed. Not holds are the cards, holds all the cards. And, oops, he, he's very good at what he does, but the problem is he's hard to get a hold of, and he can't always be around. And without us having access or an understanding of how the systems work, it's really difficult sometimes for us to function on a day-to-day basis. So we need, as a school, we have an IT coordinator who works with our privately contracted technician, but we need somebody on staff full-time who can manage all this stuff, and that's just outside of our financial ability right now. I do think we are making the best of it with our current IT coordinator, who's a staff member and a teacher. Our Wi-Fi connectivity is pretty unreliable. I mean, until very, very recently, it's been really difficult to get good Wi-Fi signal. But it seems to be much better now. The problem is it's unreliable. Sometimes it'll be great in the morning and terrible in the afternoon. Sometimes it's the other way around. It's definitely not scalable. I mean, we have what we have, and we added some access points this summer, but that's pretty much it. I mean, we're kind of limited now. And I really believe, given the apps that we use, given the fact that our Wi-Fi connectivity is better for now, we could be making do, we could be growing and adjusting if people kept up with the learning curve, if people really kept up on definitions and understood how these applications work, then I think we'd be in a much better position, just period. I mean, if people just learned how to use these systems, and I think I'm learning that maybe that's asking a lot, and maybe our information architecture, like substructure, needs to include this technology education component. And I'm not sure if that fits in technology or if that fits in information, but it has to happen. And getting people to commit, and by people mainly I mean staff here, to commit to really learning how to use these applications. We're not talking about a lot of applications. We're talking about SchoolSpeak and Google Apps. That's pretty much it, because the website is somebody else entirely. That's not asking a whole lot, I don't think, if we want to maintain consistency and become really efficient. So overall, this last little piece here, we need all four of these architectures to work cohesively. And we need changing leadership, because I know we're going to have our principal for a while, but you never know. Pastors change, teachers change, ongoing or commitment from staff and from leadership to learn these systems, to stay current on these systems, to use the vocabulary, to be consistent in their usage of these applications is really, from my perspective right now, that would do us the most good in terms of doing the best with what we have. We have a lot. We're just not using it to its potential. So anyway, I hope I met the requirements of this assignment. I really spent a lot of time reading and talking to other people and trying to wrap my head around it. So hopefully this does the job. Thank you.